told me I should know better. Still in the tea with Trevor. Found the sofa with the old leather.
It's your boy Crooklyn, and I'm back at you again. Alright, you know I'll be here. I don't know who you guys think I am. Like, I recently, reviewed the, the last video that had to do on, deal with this topic. From the Trap Geek channel, the battle for Brooklyn or whatever, a cool video, whatever. Has some, parts where I was like, he's kind of reaching, or he doesn't really know what he's speaking on. He just took information from the internet or whatever. Speculations and shit. But yeah, you guys pointed me in the direction of a video that just came out 4 days ago. Let me know I should check it out. And I'm just like, now I'm in my head like, yo, why y'all so concerned about which is, crazy, because, like, I didn't know the Brooklyn drill scene was getting that much attraction or, attention to the fact that people want to make, like, little documentary videos on it like that, which is, all right, that's cool. We really have, a big music scene, growing daily out here, a lot of new artists, every single day, which is cool, again. But, yeah, you guys pointed me in the direction of this video, sent it to me a few times. Yo, you should check out this one. Check out this one. There's more, different from the last. And I'm like, okay, just to, please you guys and, see, what you guys are speaking about. I'm going to get it done for you. But again, I'm going to be truthful in the way I feel about this video. If I feel like he's just chatting, you feel me, rubbish. Say we got gangs in New York, Woo versus Choo. Is he even spelled? Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the video.
34 members, as you mentioned a moment ago, of the Woo Gang and the Choo Gang were arrested. They are all being charged in a 121-count indictment with attempted murder, conspiracy, assault, and even weapons possession.
They come together basically to fight each other and to exert dominance of territory within their areas. Each organization does have its own territory in Brooklyn, and the two are basically engaged in a continuous state of warfare.
Ever since Pop Smoke burst onto the scene with his booming deep voice, hard drill production, and infectious personality, everyone has been trying to decode the things that he was saying in his song.
I don't even know where he's from. He sounds like he's from the UK. He just sounds like he's European. But, bro, we don't really care what the hell you have to say about our drill scene, honestly. I'm speaking for my niggas. You feel me? Like, dead serious. And I love the UK. UK, I love them. I love the UK forever. You feel me? The UK... That's how we got started on this channel with Brooklyn Drill and the UK. We grew to where we at right now. But I definitely don't want to hear nobody, perception or what you have to say. You're not from here.
The biggest enigmas connected to Pop Smoke is, of course, the Woo. But a lot of fans have been baffled as to exactly what the Woo really is. Well, the Woo actually refers to a New York-based movement closely related to the city's historic gang culture. And of course, wherever there are gangs, there are ops. Like the Bloods and the Crips of LA, or the BDs and the GDs of Chicago, New York's Woo has a mortal enemy who are named the Choo, or Cho, depending on exactly who you're speaking to. But the thing is, the war between the Woo and the Choo isn't quite as simple as the Bloods and Crips beefs of Los Angeles, because both the Woo and the Choo are actually quite large umbrella organizations composed of many smaller gang sets of various backgrounds.
And the two street gangs that I'm referring to in this case are called Woo and Choo. They're actually umbrella groups. Each consists of a number of other loosely affiliated gangs that work together to form Woo and Choo.
Now, these gangs have grown and evolved throughout New York City over the past few decades. And because there's been so much inter-gang mingling and overlap, learning about the history of the Woo and the Choo can be pretty damn confusing. So let's begin by taking a closer look at the Woo and how they got started. Woo, as they are known today, evolved from allies and members of a much earlier New York-based crew called the Wave Gang, a crew of New York G's mainly based in Brownsville with a passing interest in the rap game.
Imagine, in any weather, that's what you call the wave. That's why we're the wave. Anywhere, anytime, doing anything. We do what we want. When, why, and how we want to do it.
In fact, the Wave Gang apparently dates all the way back to as early as 2009, when the likes of Max B were getting their wave on.
Wave Gang, you feel me? The original Woo and all that shit came from Max B and them, you feel me? Like, we came outside, we grew up on that shit.
Now, later on, the NYPD's Operation Tidal Wave saw a large amount of the Wave Gang members locked up. But don't get it twisted, because while the Woo's origins are rooted in the Wave Gang of the 2010s, the Woo, as it is known today, is by no means made up exclusively exclusively of wave gang members, because as an umbrella organization, the Woo has grown over time to include a diverse mix of both Blood and Crip sets. The most notable Crip member of the Woo is of course Pop Smoke, who has frequently claimed affiliation with 092 in his songs, this of course being a Crip set from the Flossy blocks in Canarsie where Pop hails from. In fact, way before he even blew up, there's an old vlog of Pop Smoke on his block, excruciatingly trying to explain his affiliation with the 092 Crips, and the Woo at the same time trying not to incriminate.
This nigga said the 092 Crips. Oh my Lord Jesus. Alright, yo. Sorry for calling a guy named Vane also. Yo, y'all already know it's nighttime. I know the dream. I already know, man. I already know I'm sipping on that, you know. But honestly, I want to go back to hear what he had to say again so I can laugh in my head again. Because I ain't explained nothing to none of y'all. This is crazy. My nigga said,
from. In fact, way before he even blew up, there's an old vlog of Pop Smoke on his block, excruciatingly trying to explain his affiliation with the 092 Crips, and the Woo at the same time trying not to incriminate himself.
You know, when niggas be saying Woo, they talk about y'all niggas.
Let's talk about the whole
Listen, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I'm on too. All that Woo shit, listen, I'm on too. You heard, like,
on fucking
full of flows, you feel me? Woo niggas fuck with us. You know the vibes, bro. On our tour. Listen. We in the 09s right now. Like, in the 09s.
The 09s?
It's the 90s, bro.
And of course, who could forget Bobby Schmurder's GS9 or G-Stone 90 Crips, also known to rep it under the umbrella of the Woo. So there's a kind of very vague introduction to the Woo, their origins in the Wave Gang, and their affiliation with numerous smaller sets of the Crips and Bloods. So how about we take a look at their close rivals, the Choo, and see how they got going. Much like the early days of the Woo was born out of alliances with the early street crew Wave Gang, the early days of the Choo saw a close association with another New York-based street gang called the Hood Stars, another set of New York-based gangbangers who seem to have aspirations in the rap game. In fact, apparently as early as 2010, the Hood Stars and the Wave Gang used to be cool with each other. But eventually, these crews ended up splintering, and over the course of a handful of tragic incidents ended up becoming mortal ops. Much like the Woo, the Choo are also made up of a diverse selection of different New York-based Blood and Crip street gangs, but most importantly, the Choo consists of a sizable number of GDs or gangster disciples imported from Chicago. In fact, it seems to be that the Choo are allies of all of the GDs that operate in Brooklyn. Now, the New York GDs are sometimes referred to as the Folks, and they actually have a long history of operating in New York since the 90s. The Folk Nation movement itself was actually started by the GD's founder, Larry Hoover, whilst he was in jail in Chicago, with the idea to form an allegiance between the leaders of large white, black, and Hispanic gangs to try and control Chicago. But of course, what is a gang without its ops? So in response to the establishment of the Folk Nation, the People Nation was quickly established to keep the folks in their place. And over time, at least in New York, the Folk Nation members there begun to align closely with the New York Crips, who themselves had laid roots in Harlem in the 90s, mainly made up of West Coast Crips evading convictions and fleeing to New York. Meanwhile, the Folk Nation's ops, the People Nation, had made their way to New York and formed an alliance with the newly formed Bloods. Now, the New York Bloods had actually formed in the cells of Rikers Island, apparently an effort by black inmates in the jail who wanted to band together to try and compete with the Hispanic gangs like the Latin Kings. So, that's how the GDs ended up in New York, and this is why we see modern day Woo rappers like Pop Smoke or Fabio Foreign constantly dissing the GDs and throwing up GDK. GDK standing for GD Killer, of course. So, there are numerous GD sets in New York that are considered to be Cho because of how regularly they shout it out. The most famous are, of course, the Blickies, a set of Crip-hating GDs who actually X out the C in Blicky just because they hate Crips so damn much. Their most notable member, of course, is Kodak Black Signee 22Gs, as well as their up-and-coming spitter Nas Blicky. But on top of that, there are countless other, less well-known sets that rep the Choo, including PNV and No Love City. But you see, the problem with tracking the Woo and Choo beef is that each of these factions are made up of a whole bunch of different interconnected gangs, all of which have their own petty little beefs going on that are hard to keep track of. And one shouldn't necessarily assume that in New York, Bloods and Crips are mortal enemies like they might be in LA. And even though historically the GDs in New York have been associated with the Crips, over the past 30 years since these groups were first formed, countless beefs in the city of New York has seen Bloods fighting Bloods and Crips fighting Crips. For example, the Mac Baller Brims, aka the Hats, have been known to beef the fellow red rocking crew, the Gorilla Stone Bloods. Hell, even the Treyway set of the 9 Trey Bloods that 6ix9ine Snitchin' ended up taking down would have been considered part of the Woo, but even they were known to beef with fellow 9 Trey Blood crew, the Fenny G, G's or Fenihana, who despite also being 9 trade bloods are considered to bang for the Chos. And that's not to say that some New York sets don't exist completely outside of this Woo and Choo dichotomy. For example, the moving gang 8-3 Gangsta Crips are apparently considered neither Woo or Choo and are just all about straight crippin', baby, with the likes of Chef G repping this set, notwithstanding his own ongoing beef with Choo rapper 22Gs. Now, I won't go into every single set.
Oh, nah, this nigga stole from me. This nigga stole from me. This nigga stole from me. This nigga stole from me, people. That nigga just stole from me. Oh my God. Bro, you stole from me? That means you watched my video. You watched my video. You took my shit. I made that. Yo. Oh my.
Notwithstanding his own ongoing beef with Choo rap.
I made that. I sat here. I sat here on my phone and made that, people. Let me see if I can find it on my phone and show you that I made that shit. I made that. This nigga took my shit. Meaning you see my video. Nigga, give my credit for yo. Who the yo. People. Telling you, son, niggas just be stealing, man. Niggas just be stealing, man. A little fly though, right? A little fly though. I made that. I actually like, but give me my credit, man. Like, don't just be taking shit and then not give me the alley-oop for more subscribers. Y'all go check that out. It's called Suburban versus No Suburban right there. Like, you feel me? You feel me? Bye. Yours truly. That's cool though to see me in a video that got 100K though. You lame nigga.
Moving gang 8-3 Gangsta Crips are apparently considered neither Woo or Choo and are just all about straight crippin', baby, with the likes of Chef G repping this set, notwithstanding his own ongoing beef with Choo rapper 22Gs. Now, I won't go into every single set that considers themselves Woo or Choo, because we'll end up being here all day and you probably won't know who any of them are anyway. So let's just assume there's a whole bunch of different sets in New York, and regardless of whether they're blood or crip, their allegiance will fall somewhere on the Woo and Choo dichotomy. But now we know the history of the Woo and Choo, let's take a closer look at some of the feuds that have fueled this beef over the last couple decades. Now, all the way back in 2007, a New York Post article described New York gang factions in much closer terms to the Bloods and Crips scene in Los Angeles, specifically pointing out that the Bloods were the biggest gang in New York at this time. And due to the strength of the Blood gang in the city, it made sense for the Folks and the Crips to form an alliance. After all, so much of gang culture is about forming alliances to protect yourselves against bigger enemies. And this is how a lot of these crews got started in the first place. But around 2008, the Folk Nation and the 8 Trade Crips, who had been allies at this point, turned on each other, sparking off a gang war. Apparently, in 2008, the Folk Nation leader at the time, Devon D-Block Rodney, became convinced that one of his crew was snitching, leading him to order a hit on a Crip member. But unfortunately, the shooter he'd sent to do the job botched it and ended up hitting a 10-year-old girl in the neck. In response to this, the leader of the 8 Trade Crips, Larry Paget, began to launch tit-for-tat revenge attacks. And after one of his Crip buddies was killed, he went after Folk member Crispin Phillips, catching him in a hookah bar and opening fire. An incident which left his target dead, but also 5 other innocent bystanders who were in the hookah lounge at the time wounded. And ultimately, he ended up getting life in prison for that incident. And while the elders of New York City gang law were fighting their beefs, the younger generation of fresh gangsters in New York were beginning to wage war under the Hood Stars and Wave Gang banners. Sets which would rep the Woo and Choo banners respectively. One major incident that was documented was where a 15-year-old female gangbanger from the Wave Gang ended up shooting dead a 16-year-old kid from the Hood Stars, with the killing apparently taking place after those involved identified their affiliation when they ran into each other and each shouted Woo and Choo respectively. She ended up getting 20 years for that shooting, and it was at this point that an NYPD lieutenant pointed out that this new generation of gangbangers were much more concerned with pure territorial violence than traditional organized crime, suggesting that the ongoing beef between the Hood Stars and the Wave Gang was playing out publicly on social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, with members apparently logging on to brag about riding out on their ops, and the NYPD catching members bragging specifically about shootings on Twitter. But in reality, Wave Gang were going even further than that, dropping whole diss songs about their ops, such as the track Bring the Wounds Out, a song which was uploaded to YouTube with an ominous message at the end, naming specific ops by name as future targets. Now, at the time, cops were unsure exactly how these feuds had even started, with some suggesting that a feud at a dancehall party in 2010 had escalated, triggering a wave of shootings. In fact, the 19-year-old leader of the Wave Gang at the time, Andre Moore, had been involved in 3 shootings on people who ended up not even being involved in the gangs, seriously injuring innocent bystanders. including the killing of a 21-year-old man, Marlon Riley, who was asked by a Wave member at a party if he was chewing. Not knowing what this meant, he didn't have an answer, and they immediately shot him in the face, leaving him dead. And in response to the growing violence in these tit-for-tat gang battles, in January 2012, NYPD executed dozens of arrests and indicting 43 youths from both the Wave gang and the Hood Stars in something they called Operation Tidal Wave. In fact, this was actually one of the very first times that the cops had documented members of Wave gang referring to themselves as Woo and members of the Hood Stars referring to themselves as Choo. In this instance, spelling it C-H-E-W, hence the confusion about how it's pronounced. Anyway, Operation Tidal Wave actually ended up seeing that leader of the Wave gang, Andre Moore, being put on trial along with that same teenage female shooter who ended up getting 20 years. And after being convicted of murder, attempted murder, assault, robbery, and criminal possession of a weapon all in the second degree, Moore would be taken off the streets for good. And so, following the many arrests of prominent Wave gang members, the remaining unincarcerated members that still had an interest in pursuing a rap career, like Tylek Hayden and Devin Yard, along with Bleezy heading up the rap crew, would begin to go by DOD definition of dreams rather than Wave gang, continuing to release music like their single Make It Out. And so as the original Wave gang wooers were taking numerous L's and seeing their high-ranking members being locked up, the GD-affiliated Choo folks weren't faring much better, because in 2012, the 6-tray outlaw GD Folk Nation, what a name, get several murders pinned on them as part of another big indictment. With that indictment once again revealing that as part of attempts to catch rival gang members slipping, the killing of at least 2 innocent bystanders had taken place, including one after a fight where someone shot into a crowd, ending the life of a bystander, and pinning charges on the shooter in that same incident where a 10-year-old girl was shot in the neck. Now, as part of that indictment, numerous folk members were arrested, but the supposed leader of the Folk Nation at the time could not be found and went on the run as a fugitive. But you can't escape the law forever, and within 2 years, in 2014, the leader of the Folk Nation, Davon Rodney, aka D-Block, ended up getting 20 years in jail after pleading guilty to racketeering, attempted murder, robbery, and conspiracy charges, all as part of a RICO, with the attempted murder charge in that case being the incident where the 10-year-old girl was shot in the neck, going all the way back to the start of this war when Rodney had ordered a shooter to kill a rival Crip who had been spotted on his block of Ebbets Field. Now, by the time the news began reporting on this tit-for-tat gang warfare, members of their respective gangs were speaking out publicly and saying that this was the first time in history that the Folks and the Crips were actually beefing each other directly, suggesting that this was a completely new thing amongst Brooklyn gangs, thus foreshadowing the scope for a wider Woo versus Choo beef amongst all the many various warring sects in New York. Thing is, if you're not losing your life warring with the ops, you are losing your freedom warring with the cops. And as the Cho-affiliated Folk Nation continued fighting their enemies, they continued to attract the attention of the NYPD, with another big bust on No Love City, another set of the Folk Nation, occurring in 2016, where a 76-count indictment saw 18 members arrested in connection with 30 shootings.
We're here today to announce a 76-count indictment of a violent street gang that's based in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn, called Folk Nation, No Love City. And this violent gang caused a wave of terror and enormous bloodshed on the streets of Brooklyn. When I say it's an alliance, there were a bunch of gangs that unite under the banner of Folk Nation. And so we have here in Brooklyn, some call themselves No Love City. Some call themselves Gangster Disciples. And here in the city, unfortunately, Folk Nation is at war with various sects of the Crip street gang.
And this was once again a response from the cops, who were coming down heavy on the gangs of New York for continually hitting innocent bystanders in shootouts. This indictment included a situation where an innocent father had been shot in the chest just sitting on a bench, minding his own business, talking to his own son. And only several days after that incident, a 60-year-old woman was walking home from grocery shopping, got caught in the crossfire between 2 gangs having a shootout, and ended up being paralyzed. In fact, this indictment even mentioned an incident where folk members had been lurking outside of the set of a Meek Mill music video because they had seen on social media that ops had been there on the set that day.
That a rapper named Meek Mill was filming a rap video at Gleason's gym. The members of Folk Nation, No Love City can see their enemies were at that rap video shoot. And when they came outside, an all-out gun battle erupted right on the streets of Dumbo.
So So with the NYPD hot on their tail, in the months and years that followed, numerous high-ranking folk gang members and leaders were taken off the streets and handed big sentences. The new folk leader, Yasser Ashburn, ended up getting 2 life sentences as part of a RICO charge implementing him and several other members in numerous murders. And in the years that followed this, the various splintered and broken up warring factions of the Woo and the Choo continued to wage their gang warfare in the streets of New York City, with shootouts between Bloods and folk-affiliated gangs being documented in 2018, and in 2020 we would eventually see the cops coming down on these organizations as a whole, beginning to publicly indict Woo and Choo crews. In fact, it was in February of 2020 that 34 members were indicted in a major gun bust that named Woo and Choo gangs specifically. This was a whopping 122-count indictment relating to 13 shootings that cops said took place specifically between Woo and Choo members.
Now, 34 members, as you mentioned a moment ago, of the Woo gang and the Choo gang were arrested. They are all being charged in a 121-count indictment with attempted murder, conspiracy, assault, and even weapons possession.
Today, 2 violent crews, OMB under the Woo umbrella and the Hoodstar Folk Gang under the Choo umbrella, both with a home base in Brownsville, Brooklyn, are essentially dismantled, as many of their members will be facing justice for the serious crimes they've committed.
Apparently 9 people were hit in these shooting incidents, once again with several of those being innocent bystanders. And look, I know there's nothing I'm going to say to make this situation better, but if there's one thing that we learned from Pop Smoke, it's that rap music can be a genuinely viable route out of the streets for these young men born into these challenging situations. You can understand why young men in the hood join gangs, because for some, these gangs can be the only support being offered in the community. But the likes of Pop Smoke proved that there was another way off of the streets that didn't involve gangs, drugs, or violence. He broke down the door and provided the template for other struggling young men that wanted to improve their situations through music. But others weren't so lucky. On May the 11th, 2020, we saw the tragic killing of Cho rapper Nick Blicky.
Nick Blixey was discovered with gunshot wounds on Winthrop Street in Prospect Lefferts Gardens. A picture from Instagram shows the rapper, who has tens of thousands of followers, a 21-year-old artist born as Nicholas Thompson, was shot around 9:30 last night. Tributes poured in from the hip-hop world on social media for the Jamaican-American artist.
He was most well known for his track Drive the Boat with 22 G's and Nas Blicky, which has over 4 million views on YouTube today. He was gearing up for the release of his debut mixtape, which was supposed to come out only a few weeks after he was tragically slain. Who knows, maybe he could have gone on to be the next Pop Smoke. It's tragic that so many young men that clearly have the talent and drive to succeed are having their lives cut short by gang violence so often. So I hope that going forward we see a lot more people like Pop Smoke, 22 G's and Fabio Foreign turning their street stories into gold and breaking out of the situations that they're stuck in, finally escaping that cycle that's put so many of their brothers in jail or in an early grave. I hope you enjoyed that story and it's given you a little bit more of an understanding of what the Woo and the Choo is really all about. Thanks for listening and peace out.
Do I feel like he told me stuff I didn't already know? No, I didn't. And that's all I gotta say. I ain't trying to make this video too long because we're already 26 minutes in. I'm gonna have to cut out some, of the video because it was a lot of ads playing and a lot of foolishness going on. But yeah, man, everything he said I basically already know. Like you guys said, it was more informative. I live in the area, so. But yeah, man, cool video though. I like how he did his video though. I like how, he tried. I feel like he tried to make it more about him. That's why he was on the camera explaining it in a sense. Like he wanted to be the guy in front of the camera telling the story. It was cool. If you want to be known for that. Other than that, I just feel like he executed the video well. He told whatever he wanted to get off his chest, and he did a lot of seeking information. He did what he was supposed to do as somebody trying to learn about the beefs or the beginning of it and all that. So good job on his video, man. It's your boy Crooklyn, man. Like, subscribe, share, request, press that bell for your post notifications, and press that subscribe button, people. I'm out.